What's going on guys, Kade is here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the top 3 best Rapier builds for PvP and PvE in New World. So for each and every single build I will explain what attributes and perks you want to have, then what gems and specific gear you want to use to get out your stats as much damage as possible. Then as well I will show you the best gameplay of me using different weapons, so you would know which abilities you want to use first on your enemies and much more. So, if all this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then, moving over to the first build, which is the one and only bow and rapier, and these are the attributes you want to have. So no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your dexterity to 200, and then get 50 points in constitution, and then continue putting everything else in dexterity, and around level 60 you should have 400 dexterity and 50 constitution. And lastly, for your gear you want to go with the light category, and the best setup is to have medium chest piece and then the rest light equipment. And later in the video I will explain more about these 450 points and how we get them, but basically we get around 200 points from reaching level 60, and then the other 250 points we get from about 550 item score gear, which for any build and class is very easy and cheap to get, especially at this stage of the game. But if you haven't reached this point yet, then don't worry and just put the same 50 points in constitution and then put everything else in dexterity. So then, taking a closer look at the first weapon, which is the bow, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first things first, you want to unlock the first ability called the evade shot and then get these 3 perks. Then afterwards get the second ability called the poison shot and then get these 3 perks. Then from here let's move over to the other side and unlock the last third ability called the penetrating shot and then get these 4 perks, and that's it. Now from this point and onwards, you're feel free to pick and choose which perks you want to unlock next. So then let's go over to the second weapon, which is the rapier, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock right off from the start both these 2 abilities called the evade and riposte, and then afterwards unlock both these 2 perks. Then lastly get the third ability called the fleech and then get these 3 perks. And now let's take a closer look at the left side and get both these 2 perks, and that's it. Now from this point and onwards you're feel free to spend your points in whatever order you like. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay, where I'll show you the best way to play this build. So first of all, let me explain you each ability and then what is the best spell combination to use. So we have the bow, and the Q spell, aka the poison shot, gives you the ability to shoot an arrow, and when it reaches a target, the arrow will explode and create a poison smoke. An enemy standing in that smoke will be taking damage every second. Then the second ability is called the penetrating shot, which deals a lot of damage, and the arrow itself can go through multiple players, which makes the spell very useful in PvE and 50v50 wars. And lastly, our third ability is called the evade shot, which when using makes your character leap back 5 meters. So then moving over to the second weapon, which is the rapier, and the first Q spell is called the evade, which by activating makes you invulnerable for a split second, and it can be good in dodging enemy attacks, but you have to know how to use it. So then we have the second ability called the riposte, and it is a reflect, which means that when you activate it, and if an enemy hits you, he will reflect the incoming damage from you to him. So if he does an F ability on you, instead of you getting hit, he will hit himself. And lastly we have the fleech ability, which will deal damage and provide a small but nice mobility / dash spell. Okay, so the best way to attack a player is at the start always try to have a distance between you and the enemy. So no matter if you're farming mobs in PvE or doing solo or group PvP, the same principle and rules apply. So from distance you want to use the bow, and the way I like to do it is shoot one normal attack and then shoot the penetrating shot and then use the poison shot, and this will poison the enemy and make him take damage every second. Then from here always try to keep on using your dodge rolls and swapping your weapon, and this will activate your perks on the bow, giving you the ability to get haste and damage increase. So for as long as you keep your distance, keep using the bow, but then when the enemy comes close to you or you to him, then switch to the rapier and use the riposte ability and reflect the next incoming attack. Then I usually spam the evade ability as its cooldown is very short, and it will give you small cooldown reduction. And lastly use the fleech ability to dash into the enemy or try to create even more distance, and then switch to the bow and by using the evade shot and normal attacks, you should be able to finish off the enemy. My main point that I want you to understand is to use the bow for range attacks, and for close distance fighting, use the rapier. Both of these weapons are very high damage, and rapier is more meant for spamming left clicks, while the bow will take more time to practice aiming. And then the last thing I want you to practice is the dodge rolling and swapping your weapon back and forth. So it's very simple. You normally run, then dodge once, and before the animation ends, you swap your weapon. So then without the animation, you can dodge twice and swap your weapons, and this will give you more crit chance and just general movement speed. This one dodge and swapping from bow to rapier and then back to bow will give you nice speed boosts, which you can use just normally to run around the map a lot faster. Or even in PvP and PvE, you can create more distance and make yourself a very hard target to catch. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This bow and rapier weapon combination right now is super strong, and I have seen this build used by the top 1 highest damage players. Then of course you have to consider that to play this build, it will be a lot harder and take more time to practice aiming, especially at moving targets, because it may seem easy to hit a standing target, but in reality it's actually quite hard. So then lastly, for the bow and rapier, you want to use the opal gem, and then for all of your gear, use the Enix gems. And then of course don't forget that in between shots to dodge roll, and this will use your stamina, which then will activate the gem on your weapon, which will give you the plus 15% damage increase. So in a quick summary, if you are looking to do top 1 damage on leaderboards, or you just enjoy bows with rapier for PvP and PvE, then this is the build for you, so enjoy! So then for my second build, we are using the rapier and fire staff, and these are the attributes you want to have. And no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your intelligence to 150 and then get 100 points in constitution. And around level 60 you should have 300 intelligence, 100 constitution and 50 dexterity. And lastly, for your armor, you want to go with the medium category. And the best gear setup is to have heavy helmet, heavy chest piece, light pants, medium boots and medium gloves. And this will give you 22.9 kg weight, which is exactly just below the heavyweight category. So then moving over to the first weapon, which is the fire staff, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all, you want to unlock both these 2 perks and then get the first ability called fireball. And from here, let's move over to the right side and then get this 1 perk, and then unlock the second ability called the incinerate and then get these 4 perks. And then lastly, unlock the last third ability called the burnout and then get these 3 perks, and that's it. Now from this point, you're for free to pick and choose which perks you want to unlock next. So then let's go over to the second weapon, which is the rapier, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all, you want to unlock right up from the start both these 2 abilities called the evade and repost, and then after that unlock both these 2 perks. Then lastly get the third ability called the fleech and then get these 3 perks as well. And now let's take a closer look at the other side and get both these 2 perks, and that's it. Now again, you can spend your points in whatever order you want. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay, where I'll show you the best way to play this build. So first of all, we have the fire staff, and the Q ability, aka the burnout, is a big dash spell, which you can use for mobility. Or if you hit enemies while dashing, they will take extra burn damage. Then the R ability is called the incinerate, and when you use it, it creates a fiery explosion around you, which deals damage, inflicts burn effect, and causes enemies to get pushed back for 3 meters. And then lastly, we have the F ability called the fireball, which is very powerful damage spell, and as this an AoE spell, you don't have to hit directly an enemy. You can just aim it at the ground where the target is standing on and it will damage him as well. So now let's move over to the second weapon, which is a rapier, and the first Q spell is called evade, which by using makes your character invulnerable for a split second. Then the second ability is called the riposte, and it is reflect, which means that when you use it, and if an enemy attacks you, you will reflect the incoming damage from you to him. And then lastly, we have the fleech ability, which will deal damage and provide a small but nice mobility spell. Okay, so the best way to attack a player is always try to keep your distance, so always be away from the enemy at least 4 to 5 meters. So then what you want to do is from the range, use your auto attacks and activate the fireball, and then keep on using the light dodge rolls for 50% increased damage. Then when the enemy gets close to you, dash into him with the burnout ability, and then switch to the rapier and first of all use your riposte ability and reflect his incoming attack. Then when that is done, use your fleech ability and create more distance from him. So then while he tries to catch up to you, go back to the fire staff and try to finish him off. Or if that is not enough, go back to the rapier and use the evade and auto attacks, and that should do the job. Again, like in the first build, you want to use the fire staff for range attacks and then switch to the rapier for close combat, and that's about it. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This fire staff and rapier weapon combination right now is super strong and has very high damage capability, and even with all the nerfs, this build still works very well in PvE, open world PvP and in 1v1s. So then lastly for the fire staff you want to use the opal gem, then for the rapier get the aquamarine gem, and then for all of your gear, rings, amulets and everything else use the Enix gems. And just to quickly explain the rapier gem choice, so what we did, we spent all of our points in the intelligence. So to make the rapier deal damage, which usually works with the dexterity, but by using the converter gem we make this weapon now work with intelligence instead of dexterity. So in a quick summary, if you're looking for a high skill build that requires a bit more practice but is very good, then this is the build for you. So try this one out and have fun. So then moving over to my last and final build, which is the musket and rapier, and these are the attributes you want to have. So first of all you want to get your dexterity to 300 and then start putting points in intelligence, and around level 60 you should have 300 dexterity and 150 intelligence. And as this is a full glass cannon build, you want to go with the light category, and the best gear setup is to have one medium chest piece and then the rest light equipment. So then moving over to the first weapon, which is the musket, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock the first ability called the power shot and then get these two perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the shooter stance and then the next perk to that as well. And now let's move over to the other side and unlock this one perk, and then the last third ability called the stopping power, and then the last perk to him as well. And now from this point you can spend your points in whatever order you like. So then let's go over to the second weapon, which is the rapier, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock right off from the start both these two abilities called the evade and repost, and then afterwards unlock both these two perks. Then lastly get the third ability called the fleech, and now let's take a closer look at the left side and get both these two perks. And now from this point and onwards you're for free to spend your points in whatever order you like. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build. And as I have already explained the rapier playstyle twice, I will just skip it for now and move straight into the second weapon, which is the musket, and for your Q spell we have the ability called the power shot, which when activating overloads your musket with gunpowder, causing the next shot to deal a bunch of damage, and it's super good in removing someone's health to 60% just from one shot. Then the second ability is called the shooter stance, which when using your character enters the shooting stance and all shots fired deal additional damage, and the reloading time of the musket is reduced by 70%. And then for our last third ability we have a stopping power, which again overloads your gun with gunpowder, but this time when you shoot a target he gets staggered and knocked back for 3 meters. So the simple and straightforward way to attack a player as you are a musket user, you want to use your musket and keep on headshotting the enemy from a distance. I personally prefer to only use the musket abilities in big group PvP or PvE farming, so just keep on spamming your musket auto attacks, but then where the rapier comes in hand is usually you should be away from the enemy, but if you ever get caught or attacked by a player, you want to switch to the rapier and use the fleech ability to create a bit more distance, and in that time switch back to the other weapon and get 1 or 2 more shots before the enemy gets back to you. So then switch again to the rapier and use the repost ability to reflect the incoming damage, and then lastly use the auto attacks plus the evade ability and finish off the enemy. You most importantly need to understand that as a musket player you want to have as much distance as possible from your enemies, but when they get close to you, you can either way run using the fleech ability or perhaps use the repost ability and surprise the enemy by how much damage you can do in close range. And of course all of the strategy and gameplay applies the same in PvP and PvE as well. And with all this said, now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This musket and rapier weapon combination makes this build a very good choice for outpost rush, 50v50 wars, PvE and even 1v1 open world PvP, because not only you can snipe people, but as well if you get attacked or challenged you can easily switch to the rapier and deal a bunch of damage. So then lastly for your gem choice for the musket and rapier you want to use the opal gem, and then for all of your gear, rings, amulets and everything else use the Enix gems, and that's about it. So if you want to be a sniper in New World and use a very versatile build that is good for solo and group content, then this is the build for you, so I hope you enjoy. And that's about it. So I really do appreciate everyone for watching, guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. Like you saw from all of my 3 builds, I use the same Rapier setup for all of them. That is because it is by far the most advanced and best setup, so if you want to use the best of the best, then this is the way to go. So then if you have any suggestions, feedback, or other good Rapier builds that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe, and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you wouldn't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I'll catch you in my next video. So take it easy. Peace.